Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of It Takes a Village podcast. I'm super pumped to have my next guest on, Coach Mike D'Agostino. Coach, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this.
So for those of you who don't know or may know, Mike is the assistant coach of the Vancouver Whitecaps, a product of Langley, BC himself, played overseas, both in England and in Germany, also played for the U20 Canadian national team. Has tons of experience in the soccer world, has played at the highest levels. Super excited to talk soccer, all things soccer today. But first, Mike, can you just give us a bit of an insight to how you came to be, how you kind of rose to your prominence, and then, your current role with the Whitecaps?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start with just the fact that, being a guy that is just so engulfed in soccer my whole life, from playing at a young age, from whatever it was, 4 or 5, up into playing youth, programs, shortly time, also with yourself, and just loving the game. Grew up in an Italian Canadian family where soccer was a big piece of the identity of the culture. And just from the first time I kicked the ball, I kind of fell in love with it, which is, I'm sure, what a lot of people would say. For me, let's say the pathway to where I'm at was, it was gradual. And there's still hopefully more to come for me. And I've got some big ambitions, but, at the end of the day, yeah, this was something where, I took coaching as something very serious once I started realizing that my playing career wasn't going to be, let's say, in the Premier League or creating a huge identity for myself as a player. And I, started out really kind of in some real humble environments, and now finding my way into where I am now, working with some real world-class players, top environments, top coaches. So, yeah, for me, it's just been about a little bit of progress every day, every month, every year. And just trying to continue to learn as much as I can. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would say I've tried to pride myself on, is just learning as much from everybody and everything that I can.
I want to go back to the grassroots, pull back the curtain a little bit. You talked about youth soccer. The theme of the podcast is, it takes a village, those people wrapping around you, supporting you, being your mentors. Can you identify somebody who helped you, who gave you that confidence to make it to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few. I think my family gave me a lot of confidence just in general, giving me the opportunity, and they've always been very good to me in terms of just providing whatever they needed to provide. And that started at a very young age. I mean, in terms of soccer, like, my first thought goes to Vanni, to Sartini. He was kind of a guy that believed in me, going from, let's say, an upper academy youth to professional level into the first team environment. And, I know Axel Schuster gave me the opportunity to also go in with Vanni in 2021. And so for me, that was like more about giving me some confidence and then believing in me. In terms of mentors, people that I learned from, like, there's a long list. I've already mentioned Vanni. I can talk a little bit about Jesper. He's been a big piece of me kind of turning the corner and maybe even pushing to the next level and creating a new identity for the way I see football. I had some really good youth coaches in Langley in Canada that were really influential to me. Nick Dasovic, I got to work with him with the second team at the Whitecaps, but he also was the assistant coach when I was with the U20 national team. So we've had a pretty good connection, and I'm not in touch with him so often now, but he was someone that really showed me the path from being a player into a coach and a local guy. So I mean, there's a lot, and there's a lot of people that I don't know personally that I follow, their careers and things that I look to aspire to.
And you played professionally overseas in England and Germany. What was the transition like into coaching? Like, maybe a follow-up question to that. How did you feel that your playing career ended up? Is that something that you wish you continued a bit longer?
It's tough to say. I would wish it any differently, because you never know where you would have ended up. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely would say that if you just put a box around my playing career, I would say I was a little bit disappointed with it. I thought that I probably could have pushed on a little bit more than I did. I had my first opportunities with a championship club in England, and I thought I was right in the mix there, and I had an opportunity to go on loan. I took that, and I was playing week in, week out in League One in England, and I really thought that, okay, this is going to be a long career, something that I would continue to do. And um, it's more difficult than you think, especially,
Mm.
and I'm okay being away from home, but being away from home, I spent 3 years at the University of Kentucky, then I went straight to England, and then from there I went to Germany. And I've never really been a guy that, could push on to being a top level player, Premier League, Serie A, Bundesliga, whatever it might be.
Mm.
But I certainly would say I was a little bit disappointed with the way that, I didn't really push on and have a longer career. But at the same time, I'm also grateful to the fact that it allowed me to come back home and start my coaching career. And so if you're asking whether I would change anything, the answer is probably not. Maybe I would have some better footballing stories or some better experience from a playing perspective if it would have been, okay, I'm going to push and maybe find that next opportunity. But it does grind on you a little bit.
Mm.
Traveling from different countries in Europe, trying to come back home, trying to manage, with my wife, my partner, and just, we had a dog at the time in Germany too. And it was like, we're coming back to Canada, and then are we going back? And a lot of those things just kind of pop up in life. And I can never really complain. It's never been super, super hard. But at the end of the day, I'm very grateful with the fact that the playing career kind of ended the way it did. And it allowed me to take the path that I'm in now.
I want to transition now to coaching. You're a product of Langley. You've already mentioned that. What's it like coaching the MLS hometown team, and how do you even get into that?
Yeah. At the time, it was, it still is. I'm still very proud of it. It's still very unique. I know it's not often that, and I'm not just talking about Vancouver. I think across the MLS, across the world, there's not that many people that get to coach their hometown team. And so I'm very grateful for the fact that I've got that opportunity, and I've continued to stay with the club for many years. Um, it does feel great. It does kind of feel surreal. It was funny because, like, when you're a player, you always want your family there to watch you, right? And it's kind of the same as a coach. It's unique that my parents, can come watch games and have fully turned into massive Whitecaps fans. Whereas before, they would definitely follow, and they would definitely, let's say, be fans, but they weren't as engaged going to the stadium, 25, 30 times a year. So for me, I'm, getting into it was again, like, the path of anybody in elite sports is never, let's say, gradual and expected. It can change in a minute. And I do remember the fact that, I was working with the second team, and, the day that Mark Dos Santos was let go, it was like, the club needed someone in the short term. And that's really what I thought it was at the beginning, was a short-term opportunity, something I was very excited about. Also a little bit nervous about, but we had really good success. And I think we started to build a lot of good things. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people in the club really pulled the rope in the same direction, and built a really good foundation. And so that started with Axel, and continued with Vanny, and is now continuing with everybody else at the club, including Jesper. So yeah, for me, it was like the opportunity just showed itself. I didn't expect it to be as long-term as it was. And it's kind of been a gradual progression from there.
And you coached at all levels. Like, if you were to read your profile, you've gone through certain academies, youth, etc. Um, what what's it like progressively coaching at all levels? Is that something that, being at the top level now, is that something that all coaches should go through, or should you be able to make the jump straight to pro without having that experience?
I don't think there's a right answer to that. I know the right answer for me was to gradually progress through, the different environments that I did. I think so. When I first stopped playing, I was coaching everything from, like, a summer camp U5 to, a U13 kind of, let's say, BCSPL team, which is kind of the highest youth level here in the province, and everything in between. And I think where I really made a step was when I became technical director of North Vancouver Football Club, which gave me not only the opportunity to coach, but more probably more importantly, to lead, to plan, to manage a staff, to manage a club, to deal with everything from parents to board members to sponsors to opposition coaches to everything. So that really exposed me to a lot. And I think I learned a lot from the people I worked with there, but the environment kind of threw me into that. And at the same time, I was still at, you know, part-time doing the high performance stuff with the Whitecaps. I started with the provincial programs. And that kind of gave me a balance of, okay, I'm leading a club of 3,000, 4,000 kids,
Mm-hmm.
which when you take into account and adding parents in there is 10,000 people. And it really gave me a new perspective on leading and planning and coming up with curriculum and different environments and programs. And I think we evolved a lot there. But at the same time, you know, in the mornings I was going out to UBC and working with the U15s, the U17s, the U19s, and trying to really be on that elite side. So I was getting a good balance. Obviously, it's now shifted into being full time with the professional environment, and I'm grateful for that. But I wouldn't change my kind of progress. I do know there are a lot of players that go straight into coaching, and I think it depends on the individual. Some say, you know what, I want to go cut my teeth a little bit coaching youth and learning more about, let's say, teaching rather than coaching. But at the same time, I know there are a lot that go straight into the professional environment and don't miss a step. Uh, so I don't know if there's a right answer, whether you should or you shouldn't start from the bottom and go up, but I think everybody's path is a little bit unique.
What are some things that you would look for in some youth sports, or are there certain mistakes that they do that would prevent them from making the next level?
Yeah, I think it depends on what we're talking about in terms of age and level that we're looking at. For example, if we're looking at really young kids, you know, balance, coordination, ability to control a ball. The most important thing for me is soccer IQ. So if we're talking about a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, are they aware of their surroundings so they can make decisions? Because at the end of the day, the body can do things a certain speed, but the mind is really one of the most important. And you're seeing that in the World Cup now with players making decisions, with players in and around them, the subtle touch here versus there, could be the difference between giving the ball away and conceding a transition,
Hmm.
or potentially turning towards goal and getting a chance. So I think soccer IQ is probably the biggest thing that you look at. And what I mean by soccer IQ is, are they aware of what's around them? Can they make the right decision on their first touch? Can they play forward? Are they moving off the ball in those right positions? Are their or is their body orientation the right way? Are they seeing, I think a lot of people look at, I mean, it's kind of changing now because the coaching is getting so much better across the world and in Canada that, people used to always look at, physicality and individual skill. But in the modern game, you need players that have that, but also, are able to make decisions quickly under pressure consistently. And that comes down to soccer IQ for me.
Funny, just the other day, Holland is literally walking on the field, and then 5 seconds later, he's scoring a goal. Is that an example of soccer? Is he in the right place at the right time? Like, does he know what he's doing, or is that just pure athleticism?
No, he knows what he's doing
Okay.
100%. And he also knows his skill set. He's a guy that if you put him in the little rondo boxes at Manchester City, he probably is in the middle every time, the piggy in the middle, let's say. But that's
Mm.
not his skill set. You
Yeah.
put him in
Yeah.
the box
Yeah.
and he's going to eat you alive because
Yeah.
his timing is fantastic. His ability to read the play is fantastic. He knows whether to come in behind or in front of a defender. And then, of course, the fact that he is, a massive, strong
Specimen.
individual specimen also plays to the fact that when he's in those moments, he's able to capitalize on them. So it's not a mistake that he scores the goals he scores. He also, his teammates also know that they need to use him in the way that they're going to get the best benefit. So when the ball is in wide areas, they're not probably going to try to pass the ball 10 times around the top of the box. They're going to put it in the area where he can win them games. So
Hmm.
he knows what he's doing and he knows his skill set. I don't know him obviously, but I would
Yeah.
assume that this is what he would say if he was talking.
I want to get into a little bit of the Whitecaps. You're often seen, whether at the stadium or on TV. You have your AirPods in. What's with the AirPods? What's your
Yeah,
role?
so it's just one. But I'm speaking with, and I'll give a shout out to our head analyst, Drew Foster. I'm speaking with him, who's up in the booth, who let's be honest, the view that they get is completely different than us.
Mm,
So he'll give me information that either I need to know that I potentially haven't seen, uh, things that maybe he can see differently from the view that he sees. It may be things that he's seen on the broadcast angle, because I don't always get to see that. I do have an iPad there with what we call our tactical feed, which sees the bigger picture.
mm,
I'm talking to him about clips that we would want to show at halftime, or I'm talking to him about, potential subs that they might be. I can't see the other bench warming up, so potentially they've got someone getting ready, what those potential changes might mean. If we see any changes at the beginning of half versus how they ended the half, because, let's say we go up 2-0, we have to expect that the opposition is going to change. So maybe they went from pressing in a 4-3-3 to a 4-4-2, or maybe they're building in a 3 rather than a 4. Now, of course, we on the bench can see that as well, but it's good to have that reinforcement, especially from a better angle.
mm. It's kind of funny how the game has changed, right? It's not so much just standing on the sidelines, but you're getting all this information from all angles. It's something, is that fairly new to the game?
Yeah, it's evolved for sure. You've seen, like, talking just about the view that the analysts get. We've seen some coaches in the world of football spend the first half not on the sidelines. They've actually been higher up so that their halftime discussion and their analysis of the game is better. Now, of course, you know, uh, we trust the people that are up there to tell us the right information. But yeah, there's a lot of information, especially with VAR now, because VAR is changing the game. And it's not so much now about what happened, but what could potentially happen in terms of, like, is there going to be a penalty? What is that implication? Is there going to be a handball? Is there a red card? Um, and we know that the decision on the field is not always the final one. So there's so much more information going into it. You know, we're talking about during the game, but before the game,
Hmm.
we have a data team that sends us what they need to send us. We have video analysts that are sending us what we need to see. We're also sharing certain amounts with the players. There's a whole bunch of different things now that goes into a game, rather than just potentially, okay, this is who we're playing against and this is who their best players are. It's a real, it's broken down into a million pieces, and we feed the players enough. We don't want to feed them too much where they're also getting overloaded and they start to think too much about the opposition or what they could or should do, rather than what they're doing in live football.
And you're not quite 40 yet. So do your players view you as young? How do you earn the trust from your current athletes on the Whitecaps?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with some of them since I was 30, let's say 34, because I've been in the role now for the past 5 and a bit years. So I think at first, yeah, that was something in terms of, like, okay, this guy is fairly young. We actually have a coach on our staff now that's 9 years younger than me. So he's in that situation even more so than I was. Uh, I, I think it's kind of a moot point, because I think you earn their respect in different ways. Not so much by your age, but more about how you treat them, what you're providing them in terms of information, how you're helping them. Um, and everybody, coaching is an interesting thing, because everybody needs something different. Every player's a whole different profile with different needs, different wants, different ways of communication, sometimes different languages. So, we're talking about a lot of different ways of earning their respect. And I think hopefully with them, I have a decent rapport. I know I think I do, at least. But I wouldn't worry so much about the age anymore. I don't think about it. Maybe at the very beginning I did, but we're also seeing world football coaches that are much younger than me that are head coaches at big clubs. So, you know, we talked earlier about the pathway, whether you need to be a player to be a coach, or whether you should start from the bottom and start with grassroots and then go in. There are a lot of coaches now that they're in their early 20s know that they wanted to be coaches. And so by the time they're hitting 30 years old, they've had all the education and they're almost ready to take over. Whereas back in the day, players were playing until 35 and then cutting their teeth, and by the time they become a head coach, they're, into their 40s or 50s.
And like you've been there for 5 years or so, you said, has your philosophy changed since you were, developing grassroots to now? Or have you kind of stayed the same?
I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by philosophy. Like in terms of how I would see the game from a professional perspective, it's always evolving. And I think that's a mistake if it's not, because the world game is evolving. There's always someone that's coming up with a new idea that we need to adapt to. There's a new rule change that we need to adapt to. There's different profiles that you have within your team. And I think the way that, what I've also learned is that you need to cater to what you have as a roster. You can't be so rigid that I'm going to play like Barcelona if I have players that have no ability to do that, and vice versa. If I have players that could play for, and I'm using Barcelona as a,
Mm-hmm.
the top echelon of players that can pass the ball. I'm not going to play like, kick and run soccer if I've got players that can keep the ball on the ground and can play into gaps and triangles and all those types of things. So for me, my philosophy, tactically has evolved naturally, but also, learning from different head coaches. And the the beauty and the difficulty of being an assistant coach is, one, you get to lean on what the philosophy of the head coach is, but also, two, you need to follow that, even if you don't fully believe in it. And I'm not saying at any point I didn't believe in it, but it's also like you are essentially relaying a message to the players of what we've collectively agreed upon as a coaching staff or as a club. And sometimes it's not always exactly the same thought from an assistant coach to a head coach. And we have three assistant coaches, everybody trying to challenge in the current moment Jesper to make sure that we're doing everything we can and giving our ideas. And he's been fantastic and is fantastic with taking in feedback. But at the end of the day, when we make a decision or he makes a decision, that's the philosophy we're going with. And we all have to be united in that. So, if we're talking about that philosophy, yeah, I've evolved, I've changed. If I got a head coaching job tomorrow, I would turn around and say, okay, this is the way that I see the game and this is the way that I want to play. And it'd be very similar to how we do it now, but with maybe some small nuances, some small changes. Philosophy in terms of football outside of that, yeah, I think the game is just, it's constantly changing. And I see, the way that we develop players in this country is getting so much more robust, so much better, so many more layers, so many good coaches, so many good programs that, I have belief that we really can continue to produce players that are going to be playing in the top leagues in the world, and also potentially local guys going like we have now into the Whitecaps first team.
I want to talk soccer in Canada in a few moments, but last question regarding your philosophy. You often talk about trusting the process. How do you battle through when things are going tough? What does that mean?
I think you learn to accept the fact that, um, for example, like a bad game, a bad week, a bad loss, maybe two or three in a row really can put you down. Um, but I think if you believe in the fact that you're doing good work, from a coach's perspective, and obviously the players have the biggest role in everything. We can plan whatever we want, but the player's the one that should get the credit. If you're doing good work and you're providing everything that you can, you're working hard as a group and you're trusting the processes that you have. Like, we know our let's say leading up to a game, or even a preseason, we're gonna try to hit certain things. We're gonna try to make sure that we have worked on the right things physically, tactically, technically, mentally. And it doesn't always pan out. You can do everything. You could have the best week of your life in terms of training sessions, video sessions. Everybody's in a good mood, and sometimes it doesn't go right on a Saturday or Sunday. But you need to trust the fact that you're doing the best thing for yourself, for the group, for the players. And if that continues, results will come. And I think that's I'm talking more about a perspective of the environment that I'm in, but that also goes for personally. I believe in that as well. Like, if I'm going to continue to work on myself and my skills, yeah, it might not come out perfect, one day, or I might not have the best training session from a coach's side or the best video meeting from a coach's side. But if we continue to trust the fact that we're doing things in the right way and taking all the right steps and being prepared. I mean, I believe a lot in being prepared. I'm not a guy that is, showing up and winging it. I want to make sure I know everything about everything before I put that information out to other people. And I think players nowadays are so educated. They have so much information that if you, don't give them the right information, they're also going to challenge you.
Hmm. I want to transition to Canadian soccer. There's so many, we kind of talked about it earlier, so many academies, high level, high performing clubs in Canada. But what excites you about where the state of the Canadian game is at right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the state of the Canadian game, I was talking to some of the guys um, just as of even yesterday, guys that had just been kicked out of the World Cup. And obviously there's some real disappointed people in terms of the players that they want more. And I don't know all of them, but the ones I do, what I try to remind them of is we've come a long way. Not only did we win our first game, we tied our first game, we got to the round of, we've got to the knockout phases, like everything in this World Cup, as much as we could have wanted more, was a big step forward. And it really is created probably a lot of belief in a lot of people that are, let's say, involved in the future of Canadian soccer, whether that's a young kid watching the game, whether that's a parent coach, watching the game, knowing that their son or daughter, has aspirations to be a national team player, whether it's coaches that are taking, uh, motivation from the fact that, we can be a footballing nation. We can be a country that is pushing in World Cups. Um, the state of Canadian soccer in my mind is, there's been some ups and downs. There's been some things that have not been great, but I really think we've come a long, long way. And there's a lot of credit due to a lot of different people, not just, people in coaching bench or the players, but, people involved in creating different leagues, different layers. The CPL, as much as none of the players in the World Cup playing the CPL, some of them did and have come through that. And it's a natural progression going from CPL into the MLS, or it's just continues to get better. You look at the MLS as the academy side, creating a lot of players that are now playing at top clubs in Europe.
Hmm.
So, I really look at that as like, we're really set up now for the future. And we have geographical difficulties. You look at, I don't know, let's look at Morocco, who we played, or let's look at Belgium, who played the US. They have a very different landscape than us, and very different landscape than the United States. We're trying to figure out who the best players are and develop them in Vancouver, and then across the country from Alberta all the way across to Halifax. It's not easy because you can't always get those players together, and it's much, it's a different challenge that we have compared to, let's say, other nations that geographically can figure their development programs a little bit differently.
I want to talk Whitecaps just for a moment. You've been there 5 years. Is the hope that the club stays in Vancouver?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I really do hope that that is the end result. I'm a Vancouver guy. Uh, I grew up watching the team when they were playing in different leagues, when I was a kid, and had a chance to play for the reserve team a little bit. And it's just, yeah, it's a fabric of the city.
Hmm.
It's one of the oldest clubs in North America. And yeah, I really do hope it works out, and whatever needs to be done can be done and figured out. And yeah, I really do hope that we have continued professional football within the Vancouver Whitecaps in Vancouver.
And just to talk about it quickly, my uncle played for 86ers Whitecaps, and I remember going to Swangard Stadium with my grandparents. Like we've talked about evolution of the game. It's such a great city to have a sport, and then even now more so. Watching the World Cup and the environment and downtown. I just don't think. And now you're actually seeing people like De Bruyne who are saying Vancouver's a great soccer city, great stadium. When you get top level players saying some of those things, you're like, hold on a sec, should we reconsider what's happening, right? But Mike, I'm glad you say that. I'm hoping for yourself, if that's the wish of you and the players, that you guys can stay and we could continue watching Vancouver Whitecaps long term. Um, Maybe going related to that, the Whitecaps academies and stuff. How would that have an impact if there was an eventual move?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I don't really know the answer to that. I know that there's different arms of the club, from first team to academy centers to everything across the country. And given the size of Montreal and Toronto, we actually have academy centers that are in Ontario and are outside of the GTA in the Montreal area that, players and have programs for. So to be honest, I don't know how to answer the question in terms of what would happen. I don't think anyone really knows that answer.
Mm,
But I think, yeah, it's not just, when we think about the Whitecaps, we can't just think about the first team playing in the MLS. We have to think about everything that goes in and around it. And that means a lot of people, a lot of players, a lot of people in full-time and part-time jobs across the country. It's a bigger reach than, just going to a football match at BC Place.
mhm,
It's a big club that a lot of people have spent a lot of time developing over multiple years and decades. And yeah, I really hope that there's a way to keep it going and potentially even grow this into you know a bigger thing. The one thing that I always have talked about, and I'm starting to see this shift now, is that if you walked in, let's say you're running a summer camp with 100 boys and girls, and you tell everybody to bring a jersey and put up their hand and say who's your club that you support. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 100% you get people saying Barcelona, Manchester United, Real Madrid, AC Milan, Juventus, whatever it is. And you're still going to get that because that's
mhm,
still embedded in our culture and what we watch. But you do see a lot of, oh yeah, I'm a Whitecaps fan
mm,
and I'm wearing a Whitecaps jersey and that's my team, rather than, oh yeah, I follow Man United and I also know that we have a team in Vancouver. So
mhm,
I'm
mhm.
seeing that shift now of like, a lot of my friends have kids that are playing the game and are getting, they're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and they're Whitecaps fans. Uh, they're Whitecaps fans and may also support Manchester United, but they're not Manchester United fans that also may support the Whitecaps when they're in town. So that takes a long time. That takes generations, maybe
Mhm.
one or two generations for people to say, okay, well, I do now fully support my hometown team. And it's a very North American problem to have because if you ask a person in England or in Italy or in France or Germany, Spain, Brazil, whatever, they're going to support their hometown team because it's been done for generations and generations. And
Totally.
I think
Yeah.
that foundation is now started to really set in Vancouver. And, it would be a shame to see that kind of go away. But I know the people that are trying to keep it here, doing everything they can, and I respect the fact that's not easy. But I hope for the best outcome.
Thanks for sharing. I want to get into, I know we're running out of time, but I want to get into some rapid fire questions for you. Who is I'm going to put you on the spot. Who is your favorite coach that you ever played for?
Um, this is a very random one, but I'm going to say Doug Rosenland. He was a local coach in
Langley.
Langley, as you know. You probably know him well. He was just a guy that gave me a lot of confidence and was a big supporter of me and other players. And, I can't speak so much to his tactical and technical understanding because back in the day, there wasn't that much of it. But in terms of aspiring people, I think he was.
Your favorite soccer moment?
Ooh, that's a tough one. You know, it sounds maybe weird, but there were a few moments. There was one moment that really probably was the most emotional for me was, um, and it wasn't even a deciding factor, but when Sebastian Berhalter scored that goal against Miami at home in the semifinal of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, it was a big one, and it was 53,000 people in the stadium, and I was on the sideline, and I remember when we scored that, it was like, wow, we really have a chance to go to this final. Um, so that was a big one for me as a coach. As a player, getting to represent your country is always the easy answer, and that's kind of the truth because it really does supersede everything. And I had that chance to play in a World Cup at the U20 level, and that was big for me. Um, it's going to sound not Canadian, but watching Italy win the World Cup in 2006 as an Italian Canadian was a big
Hmm.
moment.
Hmm.
Very, very proud moment for me, even though, I'm not Italian, but, it's tough to say, man. There's so many good moments, both as a coach and a player, but also as a fan. So difficult to kind of, to give you anything more.
We've already kind of talked about it, but what's one characteristic or trait all players should need to make it to the highest level? Is it the
Yeah.
IQ?
From a footballing perspective is the soccer IQ. From knowing how cutthroat this world is in terms of professional sports, I think resilience is a big thing that you have to have because it's never going to be smooth.
Hmm.
I think resilience is something that can really, when things aren't going well, can push you to just continue to believe and to work. And, it's easy to say hard work because that's important, but everyone has that when they're trying to be a professional player. It's the resilience to be able to push through it that also I think is a characteristic that, not talking about the technical ball and grass side, can be so important. And when you look at these guys and women, there's, it's very difficult to also be living in a different country, sometimes with a different language, or you're moving every 6 months, or you have a new coach every 6 months, or you're away from your partner. So resilience is difficult to attain, I think, but it's also one of the most important things that people can have in this world.
And then for yourself professionally, what do you hope to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I get a lot of people that ask me if, when I'm going to become a head coach, or I guess not if I want to, more when. And you know, uh, it's not necessarily something that I've said, hey, I need to be a head coach. And I'm not going to assume that I would ever get the chance to be a head coach at the MLS level or a higher level. It's something I aspire to do. But I'm more concerned about, when we talked about trusting the process, is just getting better every day. And potentially that could lead me to that spot. It might lead me into different roles, as an assistant coach, as a director, as a whatever that might be. So if I'm constantly kind of upscaling myself and, educating myself both from experience and from, let's say, more, you know, uh, educational programs, I find that I'm going to find myself wherever I really need to be. Do I want to be a head coach one day? Yeah, I do, but it's not something that I've said I have to be that. Um, I know a lot of coaches that say, no, I need to leave the environment I'm in because I need to be a head coach somewhere. I need to be that leader. And that's totally fine. That's for them. For me, I think being a head coach is great, but it's also different. Um, you know, and if I do get the chance to be a head coach, I'd love for it to be potentially in my hometown. But I also do have aspirations to push on to different leagues. And I'm not saying that, let's say I want to go to Europe. I'm not saying it's better in Europe. I'm just saying that, I'm a guy that loves and values experiences,
Hmm.
and cultures and those types of things. So I do have my mind also on, the fact that I want to see different places and different ways of looking at football and different, because football is a big part of your life as a coach, but also, off the field, I think you need to be happy and have balance. And so for me
Hmm.
to experience other cultures from an on and off the field perspective is something that, I also have my eye on a little.
I want to give you the final word, Mike. You have the experience, the leadership, the tactical ability to move a team. Great characteristics, great insights. Is there anything that you can provide the listeners a bit of a takeaway from all those things?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who's listening, but I think at the end of the day, I think if you're looking at this from a soccer coaching perspective, I think it's almost like the why not me scenario. Why not get that chance? And I see a lot of really, really great coaches, directors, people that are from this region, from this area, from this country, um, that really do have all the ability. And sometimes it comes down to the fact that you just need to trust that, you know, that chance will come. Sometimes you need to trust that. Sometimes it's about timing and it's not always going to work out the exact way that you wanted it to. I've been very fortunate and lucky to have the opportunity come my way, but it doesn't mean that, it's going to be the same for everybody. It might come in different ways. And so for me, if we're looking at this of, okay, is there anything I could say to young coaches that, it doesn't have to be young, could be anybody, but coaches that want to progress into this professional world of football, it's just continue to upgrade yourself, upskill yourself, have confidence. It also is something that is really important when you're speaking with a bunch of, you know, well-educated, high-performing athletes. You need to have confidence to stand up and say, this is the path forward, or this is the information I'm giving you, or this is what we need to do. And I think the more that you can believe in yourself, I think the better you're going to be. And yeah, just try to stay as confident as possible, and believe in the fact that you have good abilities, and chances will come. Uh, you never know where it takes you.
Appreciate the 40 minutes that you've given me and the listeners. Is there, I mean, last question for you, is there a way that people can follow some of your work? Like, are you on any socials or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm it's something I've been speaking to, especially my agent about, is being a little bit more involved in that stuff. And yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. Something I'm going to try to use a little bit more, just to get my name out there, even as a local guy. So yeah, you can follow me on those. I'm not a big Twitter guy or anything like that. It's also sometimes too much soccer information is too much soccer information when you're doing it every day. So, I try to find the balance of, when I get home, hey, let's turn off football a little bit, except for now with the World Cup, of course. But yeah, so I have a website that I'm creating, and a LinkedIn I have right now. So
Oh,
yeah,
great.
if you're ever interested,
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I know you got a big game tonight. We look forward to the success of the Whitecaps, and then yourself professionally. So I wish you all the best. We're gonna continue to follow.
I appreciate it, man. Really, thank you so much for having me, and I had a great time.